My girlfriend cheated on me with a gym guy for 4 months while I was buying the engagement ring, but when I heard her call me convenient and mock me with her sister, I exposed everything to her parents and friends. Now she lost her job, her car, and her family, and came begging at the same party where I was going to propose. I'm 32 years old, work in finance, and about 3 months ago, my life exploded in the most brutal way you can imagine. Like right when I thought everything was going perfectly, and I was about to take the next step with my girlfriend. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I met Madison 2 years ago at Kevin's Christmas party, my best friend since high school. Kevin always threw these huge parties in December, the kind where he invites half the world. And that year I decided to go, even though I'm not normally a big Christmas party person. Madison was there with her younger sister, Brianna, and honestly, she caught my attention right away. Not just because she was pretty, but because she had this contagious energy. You know what I mean? Like she lit up the place when she laughed. We talked all night about anything, from movies to our boring jobs. And when she asked for my number at the end of the party, I thought, okay, this could be something good. The first few months were amazing. I mean, the kind where you feel like you're in a cheesy movie, but you don't care because you're happy. Madison worked in the marketing department at Kevin's company, which was convenient because that way she and I could see each other more often when I stopped by there. We moved in together after a year, which now that I think about it was pretty fast, but at the time it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. She got along well with my friends. I met her parents, Carol and David, who were super nice and traditional people, like the kind who go to church every Sunday and have family photos all over the house. The only one I never liked was Brianna, Madison's sister. From day one, I felt like she looked at me like I was some kind of weirdo or something. Always with passive-aggressive comments about my job or about how Madison could be with someone more interesting. Madison would always laugh and say that Brianna was like that with all the boyfriends, not to pay attention to her, so I tried to ignore it. This year, like in October I think, I started planning to propose to Madison at Kevin's Christmas party. It seemed perfect to me, because it was the same place where we met, closing the circle and all that romantic stuff. I even went to talk to Carol and David to ask for their blessing, which was quite an experience because David made me sit in his study and gave me a half-hour speech about the responsibility of marriage and how his daughter deserved the best. They liked me in the end, I think, because David gave me a strong hug and Carol even cried a little. I bought the ring like 2 weeks later. Spent a fortune on that thing, but it was worth it. I carried the ring with me everywhere in a little box in my jacket, waiting for the perfect moment, mentally practicing what I was going to say. In the Friday before Thanksgiving. I mean, like, exactly 3 months ago, I decided to go fishing with some coworkers at a lake that's like 2 hours from the city. The idea was to leave Friday night and come back Sunday. Basically a guy's weekend doing stupid stuff and drinking beer while pretending to fish. Madison said it was fine, that she'd take advantage of catching up with Brianna, who was coming to visit her on Saturday. Everything sounded normal. I left calmly, thinking about trout and relaxing a bit from work stress. Turns out on Saturday morning, one of the guys I went with twisted his ankle walking on the dock, like really bad, and we decided to cancel the whole trip and go back home. I got to my house around 2 in the afternoon, super tired from the trip and annoyed because we didn't even catch anything. I opened the door, trying not to make noise because I thought maybe Madison was taking a nap or something, and then I heard voices coming from the living room. I recognized Madison's voice and Brianna's, and they were laughing about something. I was going to go in and say hi, but something in the tone of the conversation made me stop. I don't know. Like a weird instinct that told me to wait. What I heard in the next 10 minutes basically destroyed 2 years of my life. Madison was telling Brianna about Trevor, a guy from the gym she had apparently been seeing for like 4 months. 4 months. She described in detail the times they had seen each other when I was working, how Trevor was more exciting than me, how he had more muscles and was better in bed. Brianna laughed and said things like, "I always knew Daniel was too boring for you, and I don't know how you put up with that guy for so long," Madison responded. And I remember this perfectly, because the words were burned into my brain. Like with fire. She said exactly, "He's convenient, pays the bills and doesn't ask many questions, but Trevor makes me feel truly alive, you know?" I stood there in the hallway, with my backpack still on my back, feeling how my whole body went cold. They kept talking. Brianna asked if I suspected anything, and Madison said no, that I was too naive and trusting to realize. They laughed again. Brianna mentioned something about my friends, about how Kevin was the only decent one in the group, and Madison agreed. Then they started talking about Kevin's Christmas party that was coming in a few weeks, and Brianna said something like, "Are you going to bring your boring boyfriend or your exciting boyfriend?" And they both cackled like it was the funniest joke in the world. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been a minute or 10. Time felt weird and distorted. I finally backed up very slowly, left the house without making noise, got in the car, and left. I drove aimlessly for like an hour, just going around the city, with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt this weird mix of wanting to cry, scream, throw up, all at the same time. The little box with the ring was still in my jacket, which was on the passenger seat. And every time I looked at it, I felt like someone was squeezing my chest with their hands. I ended up at a cheap motel near the highway, one of those with flickering neon signs where they don't ask many questions if you pay cash. I sat on the bed that smelled like disinfectant and old cigarettes, and I don't know. I stayed there staring at the wall, trying to process what I had heard. My phone started ringing around 6 in the evening. Madison. I let it go to voicemail. She called like 5 more times that night. In one of the messages, she sounded worried, saying, "Where was I? If something had happened on the fishing trip." In another, she sounded annoyed, like, "Daniel, this isn't funny. Call me." I didn't answer any of them. That night I didn't sleep at all. Literally 0 minutes. I just lay there on that horrible bed, mentally replaying every moment of the last 2 years, looking for signs I should have seen. And there were some. I mean, of course there were. The time she came home late from the Kosbach gym, smelling like different perfume. The messages she received and deleted immediately. How lately she always had her phone face down. All those little things you notice but ignore because you trust the person you're with. I felt like the biggest idiot on the planet, you know? Like I had a sign on my forehead that said, "Cheat on me, I'm stupid." Sunday morning, with my head a little clearer after having like 3 terrible coffees from the motel, I decided what I was going to do. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I wasn't going to listen to her excuses or justifications. I was going to cut everything clean and fast, like when you rip off a Band-Aid. I called my brother, who has a truck, and asked him to help me pack all of Madison's stuff. I didn't tell him the details, just told him I needed to do this fast and that I'd explain later. He's good people. He showed up in half an hour without asking questions. We got to the pit house around noon. Madison had gone out, probably to look for me or to see the precious Trevor. I didn't care. We spent the next 3 hours packing literally everything that was hers. Clothes, shoes, cosmetics, books, even her ridiculous collection of scented candles that I always hated but tolerated because they made the house smell good. Everything went into boxes. My brother asked me at one point if I was sure about this, and I just nodded. I couldn't talk much without my voice breaking, so we just kept packing in silence. When we finished, I called a locksmith I had found on Google, like one of those 24/7 emergency services, and paid him extra to come immediately and change all the locks. While he worked, I wrote a note. I rewrote it like 5 times because I didn't know exactly what to say. In the end, it was something simple. "I know about Trevor. I know everything. Your stuff is in the garage. Don't contact me again. I don't want explanations or apologies. We're done." I taped it to the door with adhesive tape. After that, I went to a retreat center that's in the mountains, like 2.5 hours from the city. Sounds kind of hippie. I know. But a coworker had told me about that place when he went through an ugly divorce. It's basically a big cabin with individual rooms where people go to reconnect with themselves, or whatever they call it. There's no Wi-Fi, no television, just nature and silence. I spent 2 days there, walking the trails, sitting by the lake they have, trying to sort out my thoughts and decide what to do next. It was weird, but it helped. Like it gave me space to process everything without distractions. Tuesday morning, back in civilization, I did something I knew was going to be difficult, but necessary. I called Carol and David, Madison's parents. David answered, and when I told him I needed to talk to them about something important, his voice got serious immediately. I went to their house that same afternoon. They were both sitting on the living room couch. That living room with all the family photos that now seemed like a huge lie to me, and I told them everything. Everything. What I had heard about Trevor, Brianna's comments, how Madison had made fun of me. Carol started crying before I finished talking. David turned red, like I could see the veins in his neck, and said a series of curse words I never thought I'd hear from a guy who goes to church every Sunday. I apologized like 3 times for being the one to tell them this. But David interrupted me and said he appreciated that I had come to tell them the truth in person, that it spoke to my character. Carol hugged me and kept crying, saying she was so sorry, that they didn't know Madison was capable of something like that I had been so good to their daughter. That almost broke me. I mean, her parents showing more compassion for me than their own daughter. Before I left, David told me something that stuck with me. He said, "We raised our daughters with certain values, Daniel, and if they decided to ignore those values, then they'll have to face the consequences." Apparently, Carol and David had a serious conversation with Madison and Brianna that same night. I don't know exactly what they said to each other, but Kevin told me later, because Madison worked for him, remember? That Madison came to work on Wednesday a complete mess, with eyes swollen from crying so much, saying her parents had disowned her as a daughter. At first I thought she was being dramatic, but it turned out to be literal. Carol and David told both of them that they were deeply disappointed, that Madison's behavior was unforgivable, and that Brianna had been complicit in encouraging her, and that until further notice, they didn't want to know anything about either of them. They cut all contact. 0 calls, 0 messages, nothing. Kevin also made a decision I didn't ask for but appreciated. Madison had been working for him as a marketing coordinator for almost 2 years, and he called me like a week after all the drama to tell me he had fired her. He explained that, technically, he couldn't fire her just for her personal life, but that he had been investigating and found that her performance had dropped a lot in recent months, probably because she was busy with Trevor, I thought, and that she had also used company resources for personal things. Kevin told me exactly, "I can't have people like that on my team, Daniel. Aside from the fact that you're my friend and she hurt you, her work ethic is in the gutter." Part of me felt bad for a second, but then I remembered what I had heard in my own living room, and that feeling disappeared completely. David and Carol also cut all financial support to both daughters. Turns out, and I didn't know this until Kevin told me later, because Madison had told him crying when she begged him not to fire her. Her parents paid for Madison's car. Literally paid for the new car she always bragged about, as if she had bought it herself with her work. They also gave her extra money every month for expenses, like she was a teenager, and not a woman almost 30 years old. All of that ended overnight. No car, no job, no extra money. Madison ended up having to return the car to the dealership because she couldn't pay the monthly payments alone. Brianna, who had initially told Madison she could stay with her at her apartment after I kicked her out of our house, changed her mind like 2 weeks later. Kevin told me this too, because apparently Madison came to the office before they fired her, complaining that Brianna had kicked her out. What happened was that Brianna realized her parents were serious when they said they were cutting contact with both of them, not just Madison, and started blaming Madison for ruining her relationship with her parents. The ironic sister who had been encouraging Madison's affair suddenly decided it was all her fault. Madison ended up having to stay on a friend's couch, then on another friend's couch, basically wandering from place to place like she was 20 years old and not almost 30. Madison tried to contact me like 1,000 times during that month. Calls, messages, emails, even tried to add me on social media that I don't even use that much. I blocked her everywhere. Kevin told me she had asked about me, if he knew how I was, if he could give her my new number. He had changed my number like 2 days after kicking Madison out of the house. Kevin told her no, to stop asking, that I was rebuilding my life, and she wasn't part of it. He sent me screenshots of some of the messages Madison sent him. Things like, "Please just tell him to talk to me for 5 minutes. I can explain everything. What we had was a mistake, but Trevor doesn't mean anything." I deleted the screenshots without reading them completely. Honestly, I wasn't interested in anything she had to say. Kevin's Christmas party came like 3 weeks after all that mess. I almost didn't go. I mean, the idea of being in the same place where I had met Madison, where I had planned to propose to her, turned my stomach. But Kevin insisted. He told me I couldn't let Madison ruin something that had been a tradition for me, that I needed to reclaim that space, or something like that. It sounded like psychologist advice, but it made sense, I guess. So I went. With a new suit I bought specifically for the occasion, feeling like I was going to war instead of to a party. The party was good, full of people I knew and new people. Everyone was very kind to me. Some knew what had happened because Kevin had told them, with my permission, and others just noticed that Madison wasn't there and didn't ask. I was at the bar having my third beer and talking with a coworker of Kevin's about, I don't know what boring thing about taxes, when I saw her, Madison, coming through the front door like she had every right to be there. She looked terrible. I mean, not to be cruel, but it looked like she hadn't slept well in weeks. Unkempt hair, clothes that were clearly borrowed because they fit badly, and she had this desperate look in her eyes that made me feel, I don't know, nothing good exactly, but not the triumph I thought I would feel either. Kevin saw her almost at the same time I did and headed toward her immediately, but Madison had seen me first and was coming directly at me, dodging people and almost tripping over a little table. People started to notice. Conversations were dying down. Like in the movies when everyone realizes something dramatic is about to happen. She got to where I was and said my name. Daniel, please, I need to talk to you. And her voice sounded broken, desperate. I just looked at her without saying anything. She kept talking, words that came stumbling out of her mouth. It was a terrible mistake. It didn't mean anything. Trevor wasn't important. I love you. We can fix this. I put my beer on the bar and looked her directly in the beer. Eyes for the first time in 3 weeks, I told her, and my voice sounded calmer than I felt inside. Madison, I don't care that you were with Trevor. I mean, yes, I care, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you thought so little of me, that you made fun of me with your sister, that you called me boring and convenient, that you had me there paying bills while you had fun with another guy. You humiliated me. Not just me, but the relationship I thought we had. And now what? Now that you lost your job, your car, your parents' support, now you want to come back? It doesn't work like that, Madison. You can't come back just because things got difficult for you. She started crying, those big dramatic tears, and said she was sorry, that she had been an idiot, that I was the best man she had ever met. I just shook my head. If you really thought that, you wouldn't have done what you did. And frankly, I don't care about your apologies. I don't want your regret. I just want you out of my life completely. Kevin arrived at that moment with 2 of his friends, big guys who work in construction or something, and very politely told Madison she had to leave. She looked at me one last time, like waiting for me to say something different, but I didn't. I turned around and went back to my conversation about taxes as if nothing had happened, although inside I was shaking. Kevin escorted her to the door along with his friends. I heard later that Madison tried to sneak back in like half an hour later, and they had to threaten to call the police to get her to leave for good. I stayed at the party until late, drinking more than I probably should, talking to people, laughing at jokes that weren't that funny, basically trying to seem normal. When the party ended and I was waiting for my Uber outside, E wasn't going to drive in that state, Kevin came out and put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything, just squeezed my shoulder, and I nodded. Sometimes the best friends are the ones who know when not to say anything. It's been 3 months since all that. Madison eventually stopped trying to contact me, or so I think, because I still have her blocked everywhere, so I wouldn't know if she tries. Kevin tells me from time to time that he sees her at the supermarket, or in some random place in the city, always with different people, apparently still wandering from couch to couch. Her parents still don't talk to either daughter, which is sad in a way, but also not my problem. I sold the ring, lost like 40% of what I paid, but I needed to get rid of that thing. I couldn't have it stored in a drawer, reminding me how close I came to making the biggest mistake of my life. Last week, I went to dinner with David and Carol, which was weird, but also comforting in a way. They invited me, said they wanted to know how I was. We talked about general things, work, weather, anything but Madison. At the end of dinner, when we were saying goodbye in the restaurant parking lot, Carol hugged me and said in my ear, "You deserve someone who values you, Daniel. And I'm so sorry my daughter wasn't that person." I didn't know what to answer, so I just hugged her back. David shook my hand firmly, with that protective father handshake, and told me I would always be welcome in their house if I ever needed anything. It was strange, but good, I guess. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely fine, or that I'm totally over it. There are good days and bad days. Sometimes I see couples on the street and I get in a bad mood for no apparent reason. Other times I'm perfectly fine. I started therapy like a month ago, which I probably should have done earlier, and my therapist says what I'm feeling is normal, that grieving a relationship takes time, and that it's okay not to be okay all the time. I'm learning to trust again, I suppose, although that sounds very cheesy. I'm also focusing on myself, on my work, on my hobbies that I had neglected, on spending time with real friends like Kevin. What I do know for sure is that I did the right thing. I could have accepted her apologies. I could have tried to forgive her and stay together, but that would have meant swallowing my own respect and my dignity. And honestly, as lonely as I feel sometimes, I'd rather be alone than with someone who sees me as convenient while cheating on me with someone else. I deserve better than that. We all deserve better than that. And I hope Madison learns something from this whole mess. Although, honestly, I doubt it. People who betray you like that usually find ways to justify themselves and blame others. But it's not my problem anymore, right? She made her decisions, and now she's living with the consequences. And I made mine, and although they hurt, at least I can sleep at night knowing I didn't lower myself, that I kept my dignity intact, and that eventually I'm going to be truly okay.